Hello everyone, my name is Peter Lee. I am the CATO security engineer for the UK. I've been with CATO for about 18 months, really enjoying it. It's a really interesting solution that we provide, and I'm very happy to be able to present that to you today. So what we have at CATO is a set of POPs around the world. There's actually over 70. If you count the dots up there, you find it comes to about 55. And the reason for that is that in a place like London, we actually have multiple POPs, and it's just not really possible to squeeze those into the map coherently. So we have over 70 POPs, and each one is a full service POP. We're not one of these vendors who like to say that they have a huge number of POPs around the world, but actually most of them are just a simple little edge proxy or something like that. And actually they've only got a dozen or so full service POPs. Each one of our POPs is full service. Our customers connect to it, provides the full range of security services and performance optimization that we'll be talking about later in the presentation. So what we have in those POPs is a converged networking and security and monitoring and analytics and performance stack that is of our own creation. And that's a significant difference between CATO and a lot of other vendors. We create our own gear. We don't OEM other vendors' appliances. We don't try and shoehorn a firewall from vendor A with an IPS of vendor B and make those work together. The POP is running our own gear, and the solution that we provide for customers, so the sockets that we're going to talk about that they use to connect to their sites, the little hardware appliances we provide, that is also of our own creation. So some significant benefits there to our customers in terms of this being a single vendor solution. When something breaks, when they need help with something, there's only one throat to choke, as the saying goes. So what we do with this network of points of presence is, firstly, we connect our customer sites to that. There's two ways of doing that. The first way is, if it's a physical site, then the customers will usually deploy one of our hardware appliances. We'll look at those on the next slide. It's a good solution, works extremely well, extremely popular. We have literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of these deployed across the UK, across our various customers. The second way to connect a site to our network is via an IPsec tunnel. And this is popular usually for deployments where we can't put physical hardware. So if it's like a hosted data center, for example, or sometimes we'll also do this in trials and proofs of concept, where putting in a hardware appliance might be a bit too much work, but it's very easy for us to run an IPsec VPN tunnel to an existing on-premise firewall. So step one, we connect their sites. The sites, if they're using something like the socket, they will automatically connect to the nearest POP. Obviously, if it's IPsec, then we're choosing a POP to connect to, but the sockets will automatically reach out, find their nearest POP, and they can fail over between POPs as well. Step two, and an increasingly popular step as organizations are really rapidly moving to the cloud now, is to connect their cloud data centers. And so many of the opportunities that I'm working with here in the UK today are about organizations that are planning on decommissioning or have decommissioned their on-premise data centers, and they're moving stuff into the cloud. So it's really common for us to connect AWS and Azure environments, Google Cloud, Oracle, IBM, and so forth. And that's, again, done one of two ways, either with a virtualized socket appliance similar to the physical on-premise socket, or also with IPsec tunnels to a VPN gateway, something like that. So we've connected their on-premise locations. Excuse me. We've connected their cloud locations. We then connect the mobile users. And again, there's two ways of doing that. We have a VPN client that runs as an agent on the endpoint. So that's on a Windows or Linux or Mac or Chrome OS, iOS, Android platform. And that works similarly to the socket. So it will find the nearest POP, connect them to that, start sending their traffic over that. We also offer an SDP portal. So this is clientless access for internal applications to external users, where it might not be possible to deploy the client. Maybe it's a third-party untrusted user, or you're trying to provide access to home users and you don't really want to, or you can't install the full VPN client on their machine. So we've connected the sites, we connect the cloud locations, we connect the mobile users, they talk to each other then across our backbone, and they also egress out to the internet, and all of this is being inspected by multiple different engines, by IPS, anti-malware, and so forth. We've got control of which websites they're going to, and we've also got control of how the applications are performing across the WAN. So we can prioritize, do full quality of service for both WAN traffic and internet traffic. So I mentioned the sockets, the fact that this is our physical appliance that goes into physical sites to connect those sites to the nearest CATO POP. And as you can see, unlike most other vendors, we have a very small range of hardware. We've got two different models. We've got the X1500 on the left-hand side, and we've got the X1700 on the right-hand side. The X1500 on the left is very small. It's about the size of a paperback novel. It supports up to 500 meg per sec, has 4 network interfaces. The X1700 has 8 interfaces, can be expanded. Those can be fiber interfaces, has redundant power supplies and drives on board, and supports up to 2 gig per sec. So on the left-hand side, that's the box we usually ship. Most sites don't need more than 500 meg per sec of CATO connectivity, so they buy the X1500. On the right-hand side, that's more of a data center model. We don't ship as many of those because, again, most customers don't need that level of performance. Now, a really key difference between CATO and other vendors in terms of the hardware we provide is that we're providing this almost as hardware as a service. And what I mean by that is that there's no concept of a hardware refresh cycle with CATO. It's not the case that, say, you buy 100 sockets today and you need to budget and plan for, okay, they're going to go EOL 3 or 4 years from now, so I'm going to need to repeat that process again. It's not the case. You buy these once. And as long as you have an active support contract with us, if something happens to the box, we replace it. If we were to bring out new features that required a bigger model, then we would ship you that model if you needed those features. Okay, so you're never going to be locked in terms of having to pay for more equipment in order to use more features. You can enable all of our features, all of the security, and you're not going to be in the position of having to go back to the vendor and ask for a quote for more RAM, for more blades, for bigger chassis, that sort of thing, which we so often see with other on-premise firewall solutions. They can deploy in a HA configuration, so you can have 2 sockets side by side, active, passive. Active socket fails, then the second one will immediately step over and take over, and that's a very seamless and quick failover. They can also handle multiple connections, and this is another popular configuration for important sites, is to have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 internet providers and be able to load balance across those, aggregate those to appear as a bigger link, and steer traffic preferentially down those. So we might say certain types of traffic, we want that to go over link A because it's faster and more available, but it's expensive. So we'll send general internet browsing over link B, all achievable, all being done in the UK today by other CATO customers. So I just wanted to show you how easy it is for us to deploy a site. So I'm going to log into our management console. This is CC2. This is really our single pane of glass. Everything we do is done in CC2. And as you can see, it's a brand new site. It's empty, brand new account. It's empty. There's no other sites there. We're going to go in and create a site. We're going to call it Edinburgh. We're going to say that it's our headquarters site. Go through and choose the country, and that's so that we know the time zone for this site in case we're doing time-based firewall rules, and also for the maintenance windows. Set the bandwidth, set the internal address space, and that's really all you need to do to create the site. But what we're going to do now is go into the configuration of that site and just enable DHCP, because it's really common for customers to replace their existing UTM or firewall or network appliance with a socket, and so the socket needs to be able to do things like provide local routing, local VLANing, local DNS and DHCP, and the socket does that. So you can see we've got our Edinburgh site. It has a red X, that means it's not currently connected, and that's because all we've done is create the site in CC2. We now need to connect it to a socket, and we've got a socket sitting there in the Edinburgh location. We're going to click accept on that and assign that to Edinburgh. And now what's happening is our backend infrastructure is reaching out to that socket and saying, you are now the socket for Edinburgh. Here's your configuration. No configuration is stored on the sockets. They can be easily swapped out, move around, replace. It's all done centrally, all managed centrally. And there you can see Edinburgh is now connected. And that whole process end to end took about 90 seconds. And this is a really common thing that we see with CATO deployments, is that the CATO side of it is actually really quick. There isn't that much for us to do. We don't have to go in and spend hours on a command line setting IP addresses and so forth. CATO deployments are very quick. They're very simple. Obviously, sometimes things don't go to plan, and that's usually because the customer just doesn't know their network, doesn't know their IP addresses and so forth. We have really good troubleshooting capabilities in our backend that we can access. So we'll generally work with a customer or work with the partner during the first few deployments, make sure that they know what they're doing and they run very smoothly from then on as well. Okay, so what does the socket do now that it's in place? Well, it will actually reach out through the internet connection on the site. So every CATO site needs an internet connection. It will reach out and find its closest POP. It will then connect to that, and now that site is on the virtualized SD-WAN overlay being provided by CATO for that particular customer. And so when we want to send packets from one WAN site to another, they're not going over the public internet. Those POPs that I talked about on the global map, they're connected with private lines. We are not the sort of organization that, say, connects our POPs with IPsec site-to-site VPNs. That would be pointless to run our customers over that sort of infrastructure. That would not be a performance improvement. So we have private connectivity between them. When we send packets from one site to another, they're going over that private backbone. They're getting the benefits of those SLA-backed private links. It is quicker, and I've got a slide to prove that. So another popular use case for us is to carry not just WAN traffic across our backbone, but internet traffic as well. So under normal circumstances, and let's say we've got a site here in China, we've got, which is very popular use case for European customers. They've got a China office, they put a socket in place, connects to the Shanghai POP. We have 4 POPs in China. Shanghai is just one of them. When they browse out to the internet, by default, that will just egress out locally. But of course, we know that connectivity from China can be problematic in terms of performance. It has to go through the Great Firewall. That tends to slow things down. The rate of packet loss rises considerably. So what we can say is, for certain types of traffic, because CATO is application aware, it's also user aware, identity aware, but in this case, for certain types of traffic, we're going to create a network rule. We're going to steer that across our backbone and egress that from London. So when those users in the China office open Office 365, it's as if they're sitting in London. It's much faster, it's much more reliable as well. And here's the slide I mentioned where I can prove, and we often do this in trials and proofs of concept. We analyze the performance difference going from one part of the world to another. This one actually is an exercise we did for a customer a few weeks ago. They have sites in Africa and they have sites in the US, and we were just transferring files between these sites, Africa and the US, and we were doing it 3 ways. The first way is just across the internet. So doing a transfer from one public IP to another, that's the blue line. You can think of that as like the baseline of the control. Then we stretched an IPsec site-to-site VPN between the two, which is what so many other SD-WAN vendors do because they don't have a global backbone. And that's the red line. And as you can see, and as you would expect, that's slower than just going over the normal internet because you do have that IPsec overhead. The green line is CATO. So that's going via CATO sockets at each end. And as you can see, it was significantly faster to transfer files between these locations, not only faster than the IPsec VPN, but faster than the internet as well. And that's because not only do we have the SLA-backed backbone to carry that traffic, but we're also doing traffic optimization in the POPs. So we're just more efficient at sending stuff than a normal TCP connection would be. So I mentioned that the third thing we do for organizations is connect their mobile users. And as you can imagine, in mid-March, this became really, really popular. Before that, we were, I guess, mostly a site-to-site WAN connectivity company that did a bit of remote access on the side. And then in March, and I think you know what I'm referring to, that flipped. And within a 2-week period, we quadrupled the number of simultaneous remote user connections, mobile connectivity connections that we were carrying across our network. And actually, we did that without having to provision additional capacity. The CATO network is significantly over provisioned and undersubscribed, and it has to be in order for us to be able to cater for changes in customer traffic. So the mobile client is extremely popular, has good operating system support, and has a wide range of functionality. However, it is a very light agent. Much of the heavy lifting, so for example, the anti-malware inspection, the IPS, the firewalling, is done in the POP. It's not done by the agent. So that means that our agent is really lightweight, has a very small footprint. On Windows, when it starts up, it uses about 25 meg RAM and it goes up to about 40 meg. I mean, that's the sort of footprint that you would see in an antivirus product, an on-prem antivirus product from over 20 years ago. These days, if you have a look at them, they're using hundreds of meg of RAM. But because the CATO client, we have the advantage of doing things at cloud scale. It's mostly being done in the POP. The agent is really light, doesn't have to do too much. Really popular options for configuring the client include things like MFA. So we can support native MFA. So users are not just being authenticated by username and password. It's much more secure if they're doing MFA as well. We can support SSO. And that's really nice for users. It means that they don't have to remember another set of credentials. Often the client will just load and log in. It's got a cached SSO token, or the customer's already got their SSO running. It's nice and smooth and seamless. Always on is a really popular mode, especially for Windows, for corporate Windows laptops. And so in this mode, the client is actually running before the user even logs in. So they're logging in effectively to their AD domain, no matter where they are. And AD integration is extremely popular as well, especially for user provisioning. If you've got, say, 200, 300, 400 or 1,000 or 2,000 VPN users, you don't want to have to go through the console and create those manually. Much better to synchronize with an Active Directory server and say, this AD group, those are the people that are going to get the CATO client, and then their accounts will be automatically provisioned. So like I said, really popular bit of kit for us, certainly our most popular in terms of the number of sites and connections to the CATO network. So I mentioned that we're kind of providing the hardware and the client actually as hardware as a service. And another key element of that, and this is the sort of benefit that customers don't really realize initially, it's something that comes to them later on down the track, is that we also patch the gear. So we look after it, we maintain it. If something happens to it, often we'll know before the customer will, and we can reach out to them and say, hey, we think you've got an issue with your socket. Maybe it's lost a fan, or it's lost a power supply, or it's had an unexpected reboot or something like that. We will also distribute patches. Now you can choose when the patches will be applied. You can choose which patch schedule you want to be on. Do you want to be in group A, which is the absolute bleeding edge, or do you want to be in group D, which means you want to wait until everyone else has had the patch before you try it? You can, or the patches are applied in an intelligent fashion as well. So if we're, say, upgrading a HA pair of sockets, we'll actually do the secondary first. If that one works fine, then we'll fail over and patch the primary. So we're not going to take the site down because both of them have been upgraded and are rebooting at the same time. So a really important benefit for our customers is that we're providing this as a really managed solution, and we're trying to take as many of the hard edges and friction away from the ongoing operation of the solution as we possibly can. So a key element for us is security. We actually started as a firewall as a service company. So we really started out providing security. And in terms of security controls, there's really 5. There are 2 firewalls. There's a WAN firewall and there's an internet firewall. And the reason there's two is that they're really doing two different things. Most customers have very different policies for controlling access across their WAN. So say from site to site, or from VPN user to site, or even VPN user to VPN user, that's a really different set of controls to what do I allow out to the internet, where I'm also wanting to do category-based web control. I'm providing secure web gateway functionality, and I'm a lot more concerned about being able to inspect what's coming down the line. So two different firewall rule bases, WAN and internet. Then there are the three threat protection controls. There are two anti-malware engines and an IPS engine. The anti-malware is classic signature-based AV, so looking for known malware for objects that are going across the WAN or for objects that are being downloaded from the internet. The next-gen anti-malware is looking for, it runs on objects that pass the anti-malware scan. So the anti-malware says this is clean. That's where the next-gen anti-malware comes in and says, well, I'm going to provide a second opinion here. And it's not looking for known malware. What it's looking at is, how was this object created? Is it a Windows executable? How is it compiled? Has it been packed? If so, was it a suspicious packer, the sort of open source packer that the bad guys would normally use? Has it been signed? If it's been signed, what certificate was it signed with? Was it signed by an organization who claims to be Microsoft.com, but they're using a self-signed certificate? I mean, that's extremely suspicious, right? So that's what the next-gen anti-malware is doing. The IPS is a really nice bit of kit. I really like our IPS solution. It's kind of looking at everything else. So we're going through the anti-malware, the next-gen anti-malware, the IPS steps in and says, well, I want to have yet another look. And so it's looking at the network traffic. It does our IP reputation. It's looking for exploits across the WAN or the internet. And it's also looking for suspicious behavior like port scans. And yesterday I actually presented internally on some some IPS features, and I've tested it thoroughly, and it really does step in and block port scans and that sort of suspicious activity across the internal network. A really key difference, I think, is not what we actually do with these solutions. So we're not really doing anything special in terms of we can detect more stuff. We've got better anti-malware or IPS detection. I think it's comparable with the best. I wouldn't say it's, you know, there's no magic here we're doing that other people don't know. The real difference and the magic is that we're doing this across all traffic. I know a lot of customers who have IPS, but it's only running, say, on their central internet breakout, or maybe on some of their core links, maybe on their data center links. For them to try and do network anti-malware and network IPS across their whole organization, including mobile users, it's just pie in the sky stuff. Utterly impossible for them to do, but we make it possible. And we do this for our customers. So the key security benefit for CATO is that we can do this inspection everywhere across all of your WAN and internet traffic, and we make it easy for customers to manage as well in our single pane of glass in the console. So another key element we provide in terms of security is our managed detection and response service. So we've got these controls in place. We've got the firewalls, we've got the anti-malware, we've got the IPS. They're all generating alerts and activity. And a lot of our customers just don't have the resources to be able to keep up with that. Even the ones that have their own SIEM, the SIEM tends to be a bit of a black hole. They're shuffling these events in, but trying to get actionable intelligence out of that and understand what to look for and know how to respond to it is, again, it's a little bit beyond their capabilities. So what we do is we effectively lease our SOC guys to the customer through this MDR service. So what this means is that our SOC guys will monitor your alert feeds. They will notify, they will reach out and notify if we think that you have an incident that needs to be handled, as well as providing this nice, proactive, scheduled, monthly, here's the state of the union in terms of your security. The sort of management reporting that is really nice to just be able to provide up the food chain and prove that yes, things are working well and we are getting value for money out of our security controls and we are actually at a reasonable state of security. So expanding on from the MDR, the other services we provide that are quite popular are the ILMM, the Intelligent Last Mile Management. So if you've got a customer who's, say, moving from a situation where they've got MPLS, so they've got a single vendor who's providing their connectivity, and now we're saying to them, you need to put an internet connection on every single site, especially if they're a global organization, they've got operations in other countries. Now they're having to manage and monitor different ISPs. And so we can take that pain away from them, give us a letter of authority for your ISP, and now we will monitor those connections. And if there's a problem with them, let's say we detect a high rate of packet loss or an outage, we will actually raise the ticket with the ISP and prosecute it on the customer's behalf. This is an extremely popular service we provide. We also provide the usual site deployments. We can provide this as a managed service, either in conjunction with partners or direct to the customer. And again, a key difference here in the way we provide the managed service is that we never lock customers out of their console. And I have so many conversations with organizations who, the managed service might actually be pretty good and they're pretty happy with it, but what they're not happy with it is if they need to make a change, let's say an emergency firewall change or something like that, they've got to raise a ticket, they've got maybe a 2 or a 4 hour or even longer SLA on that, it just takes forever. And they know if only they could have access to the console, they could go in and make these changes. And our customers have that. We never take that ability away from customers. Even if we're providing a managed service, they always have access. They can always go in there and make a change if they want. They don't need to pre-approve that with us. We're totally fine. We've got good monitoring, good audit trail. If they make a change and something breaks, we can go in and see what that is and fairly easily back it out if we need to. Okay, so in the last 5 minutes or so of the session, what I'm going to do is just quickly run through the console. You saw that when we deployed the site, just call out some of the big ticket items and try and give you a sense of what it's like to manage a CATO solution and what sort of analytics and reporting you get from that. So as you can see, that's our topology screen. You see your sites connected there. You see VPN users connected there. From this screen, you can manage all aspects of the solution, including the local socket UI. So if you've got, say, that socket that we deployed to Edinburgh, if we wanted to go in and look at what was actually happening locally on the socket itself, you can do that from this screen. So we have really good analytics to tell us the state of the links that are on each side. And this is a major concern for our customers. And often this sort of visibility is not something they've had before. So we can talk about the packet loss. We record things like the jitter and the latency, and we store that for a year. So you can go back up to a year ago on any one of your links, and you can see what the quality of the link was like. It would be nice if users, when they experience issues, reported those to us in real time. So the user has an issue, they come straight to us and say, I've got a problem. That's often not the case, right? We know that as experienced IT professionals, what tends to happen is they save it until the next time they see us. So the user will come up and say, well, last week I was on this particular site and my office was really slow, or my Skype calls were a bit jittery, a bit Dalek-y. How do you respond to that? How do you go back in time? Well, with CATO, you actually can. You can go back and look at what was happening on that site between this date time and that date time, and you can do this up to a year in the past. So we report the upstream and the downstream bandwidth, the packet loss, the jitter, and the pop distance. So when there are reports of issues on the line, you can go in and see, well, was my link working okay? We're also reporting on usage. So the user reports that things were slow on a particular site. You can go in and see if someone was hammering the link. And what we often see in that sort of occasion is it's not necessarily malicious traffic. We don't often see, or we sometimes do, but we don't often see users, say, who are downloading a heap of BitTorrent, or they're playing a lot of online games or something like that. It's often things like software updates, WAN file transfers, database replication, that sort of thing. So being able to go in, see what that is, and then apply QoS to it, problem solved, right? It's never going to happen again, because the QoS engine is going to make sure that doesn't overwhelm the link. Now, we also have built into the product a full SIEM. And the reason we have to do that is because our customers have these rules, these controls that are generating lots of events. we're storing that for 365 days, that can be a hell of a lot of information. And so we provide this instead of something like just a list of flat files or a great big long list of security events. There's a seam, it's built on the ELK stack. So you can go in, query, slice and dice, drill down to find out exactly what was happening, see what was going on the site. There are preset filters, so you can just go in there, select a filter for, say, malicious activity or internet browsing, IPS alerts, connectivity events, health alerts, and it will immediately reorganize and filter and show you just exactly what it is you're looking for. So we can also export all of those via a scheduled push to a seam or via an API pull. And that can be really useful if you want to integrate that with with a third-party seam, if you're doing, say, correlation with other controls, or you want to do some of your own offline analytics. And that's what I've done here. I've extracted some of those events, and I've just written a few scripts to create some interesting analyses and graphs. And I think this is something that's quite key to track is VPN user activity. Where are your users connecting from? Which devices are they connecting with? How many security events are they generating? You can see here, Dan Williams, 4,199 events, way more than anyone else in that time period. This is something that you need to drill into and have a look. Good support as well, using that information to provide some nice usage-based graphs and reports, something you can easily schedule and then just email that to management. Helps to manage up, right, and show the value of the solution that they've put in place. So I just want to finish now by talking about the value proposition, kind of try and tie it all together, all of the different things that that I've talked about today. So what I find is that CATO customers come to us with one of these problems. They want to reduce their risk, they want to increase performance, or they want to save money. And normally they're coming with one of them. It might be that our MPLS is up for renewal and it's really expensive. We like it, but it's really expensive. Can you do something similar for a cheaper price point? So they're looking to save money. Or it might be, we've got an office in China, they're trying to access applications that are tenanted in London and UK South, and it's just really slow. Can you improve that performance without us having to put in something like an MPLS from China to the UK, which would be very expensive? Or it's about reducing risk. They might have had a ransomware outbreak, or they're just not really confident that they can manage their firewalls. They've got maybe 200 firewalls spread around the world. How do they possibly manage those? With CATO, that's one rule base for those 200. So it's about reducing risk as well. And what I generally see is that they come to us with one of these problems, and by the time we've completed the POC, they've actually found ways to solve all three of them. And they're extremely happy. And you know, most of the trials and POCs we do, we end up going through and winning. We have a really, really successful win rate for POCs. And then finally, USPs and differentiators. There's a lot of organizations who are claiming to be SASE. I'm sure AL has talked about or will talk about the differences between those, what makes a SASE and what's not. Here's my perspective. Here's what I see. When customers buy CATO, this is why. So the global private backbone, significant performance improvement from that. Not all vendors have that. A single pane of glass for all features. Very, very few vendors have that. We do, so it significantly reduces administrative overhead. We do things at cloud scale, and this is what I was talking about with the VPN client, where because we do heavy lifting in the POP, we can reduce our footprint on site, and we can reduce the cost of being able to supply that service to our customers. You can go in and enable everything, tick all the boxes, turn everything on, and you don't have to buy additional hardware or worry that your performance is going to suffer as a result. We eliminate the hardware refresh cycles by providing our hardware as a service, and we have really flexible bandwidth licensing for our customers. So it's very common in the UK for customers to have, say, a 1 gig bearer, but they're only using, say, 100 meg most of the time, so they buy a 100 meg license from us. They don't have to buy a full license to match their full bandwidth. Then they can move that bandwidth around too as sites move, as sites are closed. We're very, very happy to do that for our customers. I mentioned the fact that we offer inspection everywhere, which is often something customers have never been able to previously do. And I also mentioned that when we provide the managed service, we don't lock our customers out. So when customers buy CATO, it's really for these reasons here, for one or more, normally for 3 or 4 or more of these reasons. So that's all I wanted to talk to you about today. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you very much for your attention. I really enjoyed presenting this to you. If you have any questions, I'm sure that there'll be opportunities to follow up during the session. I wish you well and have a good day. Cheers.